Tiananmen Square for me was like a huge event. Just, I find a lot of people have the same feeling that it was just a place that you didn't think people would talk about freedom and that it would break out in quite the way it did. And it was very inspiring in 1989, and it's kind of stayed with me. But a few years after that, as I got involved in the term limits movement, I remember hearing a couple of congressional experts who were not fans of term limits. They were that kind of expert, and they were asked, what's giving rise to this term limits movement? And their response was that it was stagnant economic times, that there wasn't much growth economically, and so people didn't feel good and apparently wanted to take it out on their congressman. And, hearing that, I just thought, that's just ridiculous. But it caused me to start thinking, well, what did touch it off? And of course, term limits is something, as I mentioned in my common sense commentary, is something that has a long history in America. And you can trace it all the way back to Aristotle. And so there's plenty of history there for people to think about term limits. But what touched it off in 1990, when you had 3 states put it on the ballot and pass it, and then in 92, 14 more states, and what was the spark? And it occurred to me that it was, in essence, what happened in Tiananmen Square, which deeply inspired Americans. Not only was it freedom breaking out in a place that we didn't expect it, unfortunately, then to be stomped on and blocked, but it was the fact that they built the goddess of democracy, which was a replica of the Statue of Liberty, and they were talking about reforms that sounded, at least when you translate it into English, like the Declaration of Independence. And then, of course, just 5 months later, the Berlin Wall comes down, the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, they pour into the streets, and all of a sudden the Soviet Union is gone and communism is gone. And so 2 things happened. One, Americans became deeply inspired about our system of government and what I would call citizen control of government. You can talk about democracy or a republic, but the whole point is for citizens to be in control of government enough to protect themselves from government. And then at the same time, you had the Cold War end. So all of a sudden, the devil is gone. And people have the ability for the first time in decades to look at their own government, and they really, really did not like what they saw. And so they were free to think about it, they thought about it, and of course, as often happens, people reach back into history to find something that has been there all along, but that now makes a lot of sense to bring to the forefront, and that reform was term limits. And so when I think about what caused the term limit movement, it was Tiananmen Square in Beijing. It was what happened in Prague. It was what happened in Berlin and the end of the Cold War. And the rejection of communism and the embrace around the world of our system of government that Americans realized was not being embraced by their own representatives. So I'm inspired every year when this anniversary rolls around, the 4th of June, a couple of times as I've gone to look at videos that we might post on the website, thisiscommonsense.com, I'm overcome. I'm overcome with emotion. And it's even more moving when I think about that it is not only something, that happened in China, but that what happened in China affected those of us in the United States in such a deep way. And of course, as they're still fighting for even minimal free speech, we're still fighting for a Congress that represents us. And I think we'll know when we have a Congress that better represents us because we'll have term limits.